Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.
Hey, and welcome to the Wager Zone. I'm here with Dynamite David. We got one hell of a show. We're going to break down some more of the soccer match week 2 for the EPL and French leagues, Bundesliga, and Serie A kick off. So we got a lot of action there. We're going to continue our college football preview, moving into the big boys, or what's left of the big boys to say, Pac-12 and Big 12. Then we're going to do our NFC South preview. So a whole lot to get into. So let's kick things off on the soccer side of things. Friday was a bit of a wash. I will say Bayern Munich kicked off in the Bundesliga on Friday. Harry Kane came in, got a goal. Leroy Sané got 2 goals. I wouldn't say it was an easy game. Most of it played out sort of a lot like we saw Bayern Munich, where they struggled to really put the team away until those last 10 minutes. But what'd you make of Bayern Munich's sort of first kickoff here with Harry Kane fronting the line?
I think this is kind of what we expected to see in that cup match last week. They just kind of come out and took care of business pretty handily. Kane got a goal. Should see a lot more of that later on this season.
Yeah, I was impressed with the way they created opportunities. We'll see if they can continue it up. Still a little worried defensively, but I will say they put Kim in there, who was not in that cup game. Looked a little bit better defensively with probably one of the best center backs in the league. We'll see how that plays out, but let's go over to England here. Let's sort of kick things off with Liverpool. 3-1. The score, I think, looks how we probably thought this game was going to go. I'm curious what your take on it was, because we definitely started off a little nervous there, but it sort of played out how we are. What's your sort of feeling on Liverpool? Are they finding their stride more like they were 2 years ago, or are you still a little bit worried about them? I'm a little worried, but people seem to be calm. I know they're going to score goals, but I mean, Bournemouth was getting behind them pretty easy, especially early, and it just, I don't know. I don't know what to make of Liverpool quite yet. Yeah,
I'm very concerned here. Slow start, get down 1-0, early, and not a very good team, by the way. And this was at Liverpool's house, and just it kind of looks like the same old that we saw last week, and kind of middle of the season last year. Just, I don't know if it's just lack of focus, lack of cohesion with the team. They do get goals, but I mean, this was on the verge of a draw especially after they got that red card. They managed to squeeze one through, but there was many opportunities for Bournemouth to get this tied up, and I think Liverpool was lucky for it to fall the way they did. And if they were playing a slightly better team, I think it could have gone the other way.
You had the goal essentially in the first minute of the game, but it got ruled out by barely being offsides. And then we're like, oh, okay, cool. And then 2 minutes later, they let in an actual goal. And I think the worry started to come. But I'll give this team more time. But betting-wise, I don't know if I can fully trust them. And so I'm just going to continue to be cautious, especially when they're on the road.
Well, this is a team that I thought was going to get back into the top 4 this year, and they're not really showing that yet. And so we'll see if they can turn it around. It's only 2 weeks in, long season.
Yeah, but flip things on to the other side. We'll go to Brighton. 4-1 win versus Wolves. The Wolves' happiness seemed to last about a week. We'll get to Manchester United here in a little bit, but Brighton continued to just look really, really good. Yeah, I know their opponents have been
2 weak opponents.
Bottom tier, but they've sort of done what they're supposed to do. They put goals on them. They look to playing good football. Are they? If you could make a bet on them now, would you make that bet for them to be in the top 4? Is that probably a little too much considering opponents? And we haven't gotten to Europe. European play, I think. I want to see this team in European play, but betting wise, I'm just kicking myself because I've let them pass the last 2 weeks, and you've actually been aggressive on them.
Yeah, I've won, I think, bets on both weeks on them, and they performed well. Yeah, I'd say depending on the value, I think it'd be worth. I think they're definitely top 8 for sure, and could slide up to push the top 4. We'll see how they do against the tougher competition. But right now they're taking care of business. I don't think you can fault them for anything they've done so far. If anything, they've impressed me a little bit because I think some of these games could have been, just simple 2-0 victories, and they've put some goals up. So I'm impressed by that, and I think that the good teams they put their foot on the throat of the bad teams and dominate. And that's what we don't see from Liverpool. Yeah. So we'll see what Brighton does when they get into tougher competition. But yeah, I'm really impressed by them.
They've probably been the most impressive, other than maybe Man City. I'm curious what you thought of this game. I'm not gonna lie. Little disappointed in Newcastle here.
Yeah,
I thought Man City came in a little bit like a wounded animal. This was essentially their 4th game in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks to start the season. They played 4 sort of legit games. However you want to say the 2 cups that they played in, but they had to travel to the Middle East to play one of them. They ended up going, to penalties in that Arsenal Cup matchup, plus 2 regular season matchups here. But I thought Newcastle would come out, be aggressive.
Yeah.
And
I thought there was going to be goals.
Yeah. They sort of did the exact opposite. It just looked like they were trying to play for this, 1-0, 1-1 sort of tie game, and I didn't like the way Newcastle came out here. I think they aren't as good as Man City, but if you're going to go after Man City, and I get the scary part of trying to open up, it'll probably play out a lot like it did last year when we made a bunch of money off this game early in the season when we got those 6 goals.
Yeah.
I get that, but I don't think Man City was capable of sort of opening up the coffers here. Especially coming off that trip, from the Middle East. Injuries all over the place, including the coach, now that you find out. I was disappointed in the way Newcastle played here. I thought they'd try to be real aggressive and take it to Man City a little bit more, and it looked like they were playing for a low-score draw here, and Man City was like, okay, we're all tired. We'll sit around the center circle and pass the ball the whole game. Yeah,
I thought you hit the nail on the head with this was an opportunity for Newcastle to get a jump on them early and get a game that this was an opportunity for a bit of a game later on in the year that really could affect the standings. Instead, they got a loss. But you're exactly right with the injuries and the fatigue on City. Newcastle had every opportunity to jump in and take this one, and just shaking my head over how they came out and disappointed. Like I said, I was expecting a lot of goals, and City probably would have pushed harder had Newcastle, and we would have got my goals. But Newcastle was perfectly happy to just let this thing bleed out and then keep it close.
Yeah,
but
it was let's keep it close and see if we can steal one of those last.
But
they started to make a push maybe the last 20 minutes to try to get a goal.
But I mean, if they're going to have a top 4 placement, they need to have the mentality that they're just as good as these guys. They played scared, and they should play to win.
That's what confused me so much, because the week before. Now, granted, I know it's at home and it's in a place where they can bring a lot of energy, but basically they played Aston Villa and wore Villa down to nothing.
Yeah,
where
dominated
the last 40 minutes, they were running all over them. I thought they'd come with that same sort of thing versus Manchester City. And
we've seen City's defense is more than vulnerable.
Yeah, you saw it midweek versus Sevilla.
Yeah.
It was 1-1, but Sevilla had 3 or 4 chances where they should have gotten a couple more goals. Just disappointing. I mean, you can't... It's hard to criticize when it's 1-0 and you're in Man City.
Yeah. But
this seems like an opportunity lost to get 3 points, before Man City, hits full stride in February and starts, the ship really, cruising out to sea instead of sort of slowly moving its way out of the harbor here.
Yeah.
Just disappointing, I think. I thought we were going to get a better showing here from Newcastle, but... We'll go to one who I thought was a worse showing. Tottenham United. And it wasn't Tottenham who was the worst showing. They got off to of a slow start, but honestly, probably from the 30-minute mark
Oh yeah.
on, they were running Man United off the pitch. Man United had a couple opportunities early, including Bruno Fernandes's header with literally no one around him that somehow went wide and high. Tottenham looked pretty much like I think we both thought they were, similar to last week, much more entertaining. But what do you make of Manchester United here 2 weeks in a row? It just doesn't look right now.
Well, at least they managed to get the win week 1. But this week it was a
sort of, depending on officiating.
yeah. But I'm proud of my Spurs. I thought they played well. This team's gelling. A lot of new players in this team, but they're gelling quickly, and I like that. And I thought this was a good win for them. But I think it might be time to hit the panic button for United. I know it's only 2 weeks in, but we were expecting them to, they finished the season strong last year and pushed, but not seeing it yet so far.
Yeah. You talked to me earlier today. Rashford goal this week.
Yeah.
And I sort of looked at you and I was like, are they going to play him up the middle? Because, 2 games, how many opportunities do you think Rashford's even really had to score? Maybe a half opportunity.
Yeah.
Had a couple, long-range shots from bad angles.
Well, and usually those are ones he's creating himself.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the goal opportunities. The assists aren't there. It's kind of one-on-one runs here and there that are getting them their shots, but they're not generating the kind of offense they're going to need to get goals.
I said to you, are they going to play him on the wing? Or are they going to play him through the middle? If he's on the wing, I say go for it. But it's not something that, you can make your picks on like Wednesday, not knowing if he's going to play up the middle again. Because if he's going to play up the middle, I would say, no, do not take it.
Yeah, I was looking at it. It's even money. It's only plus 100. I mean, if they're going to get a goal, it's a high chance that he's going to get it. But right now, 1 goal through 2 weeks.
Yeah, off a defender's head. So, Manchester United, slow start. We'll see. I'm not going to go totally all out till they get, the striker that they bought from Atlanta back. And Rashford then can go wide.
Yeah.
They have the guy through the middle. Maybe everything balances out a little bit. I don't know quite what they do with Mason Mount. I think we talked about it a little bit. The other day about sort of their midfield being a little bit too offensive and them leaving Casemiro on an island. And I think you saw that even more so, in that game in that second half where too many people were forward and Casemiro was trying to cover 3 or 4. And that's why Tottenham's midfielders got some goals. So we'll move on. I'll touch on Villa, Everton. Villa, nice bounce back. Everton.
Just fade Everton every week, and you've got a good shot at making money.
I would say if they're at home, maybe look at the double chance because they could sneak a draw. But if they're on the road, wow, they looked awful. We'll go to the game that probably
lost me some money.
I think it's a 2-year trend of you. I need to go back and look up at just the sheet on how much money you've lost on Chelsea the last 2 years because it continues to pile up. But I guess Liverpool's defense is really just bad because Chelsea looked not good. It was the same sort of thing. A lot of the ball, not much goal opportunities, and not really any goal scorer. And then just get hit on the counter a couple times, and West Ham wins it.
Well, they were getting shots off, but none of them were close.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, yes, you look at the numbers, and it's like, oh, they might have dominated this. You watch the game and go, yeah, none of those are really going to have a chance to score.
Yeah, I think it was, it was double digits shots, but, only at small, 2 or 3 on target. Yeah. And, you're only going to get maybe a goal out of that, and that's all they managed.
What? Are we going to see gradual improvement here by Chelsea? That, Caicedo came in, wasn't a great look, came in and got a penalty. Granted, that was a little bit of a tough situation, but How much is your leash here on Chelsea?
I don't know. I was trying to look at take them this next week. I talked myself out of it. I'm kind of at a wait and see, but we might just have the same Chelsea that we had last season.
I think so. Last one, Arsenal on Monday played Crystal Palace. Sort of a ho-hum game that then got ruined by the stupid double yellow, that ended the red card. Arsenal wins, so they're on 6 points. But
Still not putting up goals like I would expect.
It has not looked pretty, I will say, the last 2 weeks. But, they have a chance this week. So do you think it finds its way, or are we basically waiting till Gabriel Jesus pops back? And that's going to be a couple months, because it doesn't look smooth right now. And Nikita just... He finds open. He probably belongs on Chelsea. He finds open spots, but he had 2 or 3 once he should have finished, including one I think 2 minutes into the game that he should have.
I mean, you can't panic. They're getting the wins. They're back at home this next week. I think we may see some goals there. Weaker opponent, so we'll see. But Crystal Palace isn't that great.
Yeah, it was enough to get the win. No panic quite yet. I will say, we'll move to La Liga here. This was not La Liga's best week for TV coverage. Real Madrid got the win. I didn't think they looked great, but, another Jude Bellingham goal. Almeria, it's not exactly what you think. They do what Real does, sort of win ugly, but I'm going to go... Barcelona still continued to... I don't know how much of that game you watched. I watched the whole thing because I was curious to see how they do in the...
All I know, I kept checking the score, and it was still 0-0 for as long as I could remember.
It was going to be 0-0 until finally a couple people made a nice little run in a play. But we talked about it last week, but... It's sort of a carryover from that last sort of month, 2 months, that Barcelona just didn't look right offensively. It continues again. Lewandowski, I know it's not panic time, but...
Where's he at?
Technically speaking, it's now like 4 games in La Liga that he hasn't scored. And, you sort of brush that by on most people, but Lewandowski's one of those guys that's sort of a goal a game. And... he hasn't looked good. He didn't look good in this one. Where are we sitting here with Barcelona? It's a little bit the same as Arsenal. It's ugly. They got the 2-0 win. But the 16-year-old that they started out on the wing, if I'm like Ferran Torres or Ansu Fati, I'm getting a little concerned that the coach values a 16-year-old out there more than I do.
Well, it was just a complete... lack of urgency right now in Barcelona. They seem content to just kind of cruise right now at this point in the season, and we'll see if they turn it on and flip a switch and start playing a little bit more aggressive. But right now they're just kind of coasting.
Yeah, I'm curious how long the Barcelona fans and press sort of last with these sort of 0-0 into the 80th minute type games. We'll go to one. I talked about them last week and got burned a little bit. You got burned on them this week. Real Sociedad, Europe hasn't even started, and it's not been a clean start. I don't know if you can hate on it right now, because they do have 2 points. They haven't lost, but it's looking a little rough for them as well.
They got a semi-early goal in the 22nd minute in this one, and I thought they had a lot of opportunities early, but then it just kind of fell into, just kind of no man's land for a while, and they were just, they kind of turned it off, and we're just like, all right, we'll just win this 1-0, and then there you go in 4 minutes.
Bounces around the box and onto someone's leg. It was similar to the game the week before. They got a goal early and just seemed to think that was enough. It wasn't enough. Walk away with a tie, and then. I don't even want to break down Atletico Madrid, Real Betis all that much, other than I won a lot of money because it played out sort of exactly how I thought, but just not a good TV week for the La Liga. Barcelona, Real Madrid look terrible. Atletico Madrid, purposely, it seemed like, went to Real Betis to go 0-0, though they have a huge payroll with a lot of high-end players, and just ugly. We'll go to the Bundesliga, and this was a little better. That Leverkusen RB Leipzig game, we talked about Munich earlier, but that Leverkusen RB Leipzig game, really, really good. I wasn't aggressive on Leverkusen this week because I didn't trust them, but they're starting to win me over here towards their play towards the end of the season, and then starting off with a win here versus RB Leipzig. They look like they could be actual contenders here. Yeah,
I'm excited. They're my team that I like to follow in Bundesliga, and they're proven that they may be the ones to push Munich for this league. Still a little concerned about their defense, but I think they're just happy outscoring people.
Yeah, and I will say their defense has looked better under.
I did see goals in this match, though. I think I hit a bet on an over here. I think I was even actually looking for more goals. Leipzig scores well, so we'll see against some of the other competition.
Yeah, a couple other Dortmund 1-0. It wasn't pretty, though. I should give them credit anytime Dortmund can get a 1-0 victory. But they found the goal late, so I guess that's a plus. But I didn't think they played well for 60, 70 minutes here. They started to push late, but it wasn't all that great. I will say I watched a little of the Stuttgart game versus Bochum. I'd fade. We were talking about teams to fade. I'd fade Bochum on the road every game because Stuttgart tore them apart, and maybe Stuttgart's going to be really, really good. They're usually about a middle of the pack team, but Bochum looked really, really bad. That was about it. Freiburg-Hoffenheim was a pretty good game to watch, but what'd you make of Dortmund? Good, bad, ugly? They got it done. The full Dortmund experience.
They kind of looked like the same how they kind of finished up last year. We'll see, but they're going to have to generate more goals.
Yeah. One more to touchdown. Frankfurt won 1-0. I thought this would be a little bit more high scoring, especially at home, but they found the goal. Darmstadt.
Yeah, this is the team that you hate. So.
I will say, it didn't look like they were ever going to score.
Yeah.
They basically set their whole team back sitting in the box. So I will say that's a little hard to break down, but I thought Frankfurt be a little bit more aggressive here. Union Berlin, I will say, kicks off the season with a nice 4-1 win. Hopefully they can keep that going. I always like this Union Berlin team to play well, but we'll see.
One of the best environments for soccer I've ever seen.
Once again, once Champions League games start here, I'm going to be full bore watching those. But, Mainz, mid-table team at Union Berlin, you sort of know what that was going to go. Serie A, not a ton of upsets here. Napoli came out, played pretty well, got the win. For Frocione. I will say Roma looked pretty bad, but I thought that was to be expected a little bit because they have a lot of injuries. Laszlo, I think, was the biggest sort of, I'd say, upset, but anybody who gambles on Laszlo, knows.
Mobley got his goal.
Yeah, that's essentially it. They went on the road. They didn't play great. Immobile got his goal. If you're taking Laszlo, wait till they're at home. The one I wanted to touch on was Juventus 3-0. I talked to you a little bit that I thought this Juventus team might be pretty good.
I think they're going to want to make a run for the title.
If you can still get decent odds on them to win Serie A, I'd look hard on them. Just a nice 3-0 win. I will say, first, half, Chiesa, Dusan Vlahovic, they look like they actually wanted to play open football. When they do that, they can use those elite athletes up there to score goals. Second half, they pulled back a little bit, but I think as long as they at least start the first 60 minutes and build a lead, using those guys up front. If you got Chiesa, if you got Vlahovic, use them, don't sit in a defensive shell. And then Milan, on Monday, Christian Pulisic looked good.
Yeah.
Milan looked pretty good, sort of similar to the Juventus game. I thought they got the lead early.
Yeah,
and
they
just sort of
kind of dominated it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they weren't content with the one goal and
Yes.
they pushed, got the two before they sat
That was
back.
a great goal by Pulisic as well.
Yeah.
That was really sweet. And he sort of started off the goal with Giroud with that nice long ball cross court that led to the cross that Giroud got the end of. We'll touch on the French league. Mbappe's back, came in, I think, 50-minute mark, 55-minute mark.
Yeah, got his penalty.
Got his penalty, got his goal. But then PSG gave up a penalty and tied 1-1. The only thing I could reiterate is, Monaco looked good again.
Yeah.
If you're going to grab somebody, you're running out of time here because I think people are good. It's going to start to dawn on them that this PSG team.
Yeah.
That being said, we still got 7 more days till the transfer window, so you're always playing with danger when you're messing with PSG. You make a bet on the French league and they buy 4 guys all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it, once again, I grabbed Monaco. I thought they looked really, really good. Once again, 3-0 win versus Strasbourg. They're in their talks to bring in a couple high-end guys as well. I don't know if they need to, but not much in the French league other than, PSG. Not looking great. And so, ride against would be my...
Yeah, and lock down any futures of
Yes.
other teams that you think might win
Yeah,
French League One.
grab that right now because I think a couple more games...
There's probably a good handful that are some decent value.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw today because we were talking over-under goals, and they already sort of adjusted
Yeah.
PSG not being able to score goals all that consistently.
Yeah.
All right, I think that pretty much wraps up our soccer coverage this week. We'll get into our soccer with our picks later in the week. You'll have your picks out probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
Be ready to go. I'll probably drop mine on Friday. A good week for me this week, so back on track. But let's get into college football, and this is probably our farewell preview to the
Yeah.
Pac-12. This is actually a little sad.
Well, and it's a good year for the Pac-12.
Yeah.
I was looking it over. There's 6 teams that could potentially win this conference. It's not the typical Oregon, USC, and that's it.
No,
there's a lot of good teams in this conference, top to bottom. I think.
I think that's they just seem to finally have refound their football footing here.
Yeah.
The basketball's been better of late after a nice 10-year trend of really, really bad. Probably a longer trend if you want to look at it. I don't think you can say we didn't foresee this coming. The Pac-12 seemed to be bleeding for 30 years now. But it is a little sad not to have that sort of West Coast team West Coast conference.
Well, and they're always fighting for TV recognition because so many of their games are played after the majority of the country's asleep. Every now and then they get a good early game, but I normally I'm down on the Pac-12, but I think we've got a really exciting year ahead of us, and it's going to be we'll really miss it next year. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the teams aren't going away, but I think we've seen it with like the Nebraskas and even I think even you and I still like a Maryland.
Yeah.
It's still in our head. Why
Rutgers.
Yeah, why they aren't playing North Carolina, and we're like, oh yeah, they're at Northwestern on a random Wednesday night
In November, and it's snowing.
We're like, this doesn't quite feel right, but I think we're gonna feel the same sort of thing when USC is playing, Iowa on Saturday, and they're big Saturday, USC Iowa, and we're like, okay, whatever that is.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick things off with USC. I will say improvement upon last year with Clay Helton out and Lincoln Riley in, but I will also say it was vaguely similar to every Lincoln Riley team I have ever seen. I don't think they were dominant in any of the games, really. I think we spent the first 8 weeks going, this team wins, but it doesn't look like it's going to win. It did go 8-1 in conference, but the most important game they lost. Whether they want to blame officiating or not, are they going to be contenders here, or are they going to be Lincoln Riley? Redux. A lot of fancy numbers in offense. Lose every big game versus a team who can punch them in the mouth a little bit.
Yeah, I like this USC team. I think they're talented top to bottom. One of the more talented. There's a couple teams I like roster wise than USC, but their schedule's pretty favorable. The one concern on their schedule, I think, is that road game at Washington in November. That's a really tough place to go and win one of the loudest stadiums in the country when it's full, and I think Washington's going to be right there. So I think that's going to be a huge game. But I definitely could see this team going through conference with just one, maybe two conference losses. But if they can get away with one, that might be enough to get them into the conference championship game. So we'll see. They don't have divisions anymore, I don't believe. So, we could, see a rematch of USC Washington at the end. But I like those two teams. They do get Oregon at home, road game against UCLA, but I'm not quite as big on UCLA this year. So
we'll see. Their quarterback had been there for 15 years. So.
but yeah, Lincoln Riley, he's going to generate offense. These guys are going to play well. I think they run through this schedule. Like I said, another road game, Utah. So that's a tough one as well. But I think at most two conference losses. But I think if they can get through with one, they'll definitely be in that championship game.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot of hype early about USC because I think they blow.
Yeah, I think they win
out
until they get to Notre Dame.
And then I think the schedule totally turns. You got Notre Dame, Utah, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. You do have Cal in there, but I'll throw that one away. But that's a really, really dark stretch there. Notre Dame is exactly the type of team that Lincoln Riley lose to. Notre Dame might throw the ball 4 times, run the ball up their gut the whole time, hold the ball, and USC, does 3 5-second 3-and-outs and game over. Notre Dame wins 13-10, and you're like, what happened? And, you'll hear some crappy stat about how USC averaged 20 yards per play, but they only run 10 plays. And I think they are definite. I'd probably make them the favorite in the Pac-12, but I don't know if I quite put them in my national championship contender list.
I mean, we're going to have a one-loss Pac-12 champion to get in the playoffs, I think.
And I don't think I think all these teams are there's so many.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, pretty deep league here. Probably about 6, at least really, really good teams. You might be able to expand that out to 8, depending on how a couple of these grow, but definitely 6. Throw in a Notre Dame here. I think it's pretty similar to last year's, 11-3, and
then just turn it off and not care about the bowl game.
That's correct. Speaking of probably the other contender in here, Utah. Really sort of weird season. It was sort of up, down, up, up, and just a little stretch there where they seemed to lose their offensive footing. Defense was not as strong as it usually is, and then that last sort of half of the season, they seem to have found their defense. Offensive came around, and they really just hit their stride that last, I'd say, about month and a half when they really caught fire. So 10-4 year, 7-2 in the conference, but I think they were the best team in the conference definitely last year. I'm curious what you make of them this year. Really, really difficult schedule, I will say.
Yeah, I love this team. They're actually my favorite team in this conference. I think they're the most talented team, and they're well coached. But, brutal schedule. That's why I don't think they're going to win it. They got to go to Oregon State, to USC, to Washington. A semi-tough non-conference going to Baylor. That's a tough place to go to on the road, no matter.
In Florida in the opener.
Yeah, I think they're going to handle Florida. I think Florida's pretty bad this year. So I think they'll get that one. But I think that road trip at Baylor, and then just at Oregon State's really tough. At USC
that's what
stuff.
I was going to say. There are tricky ones in there too. You got at Oregon State. I mean, I don't know how good Arizona is. I'm going to jump them up a little bit, but
Yeah.
at Arizona on November 18th, that's a really tricky road game. It'll be hot there, and it won't be hot anywhere else. It's just a really, really weird, difficult schedule, especially that combo, like I mentioned. You go up to Washington, play that game, come back down, go all the way down to Arizona. It's just really, really difficult schedule. Once again, it might be a 10-4 type season, maybe not quite that many losses, but
Yeah,
I can see it being in and around there again.
Yeah, I think they're going to be right around where they were last year. Maybe one more conference loss, which drops them a little bit, just because I think the conference was a little tougher. But yeah, I like this team. It's just I think the way it's going to fall is going to make it hard for them to win the conference.
Yeah. I think their win total reflects that too. It's at 8.5. I think
Yeah.
the schedule just scares people.
I think 9 would be a good year for them going through this schedule.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right, Oregon, interesting team. I will say that 10-3 last year. It didn't look as clean, I will say, as it did under Mario Cristobal. I think some of that was to be expected. They also sort of lost a little bit, but what do you make of this Oregon team? It's another one that's sort of in that definite high-end contender territory. Bring back some really, really good people. Is this going to be a high-end contender here in the Pac-12?
Well, I was looking at this, and I think this is Bo Nix's 6th year in college football. It was blowing my mind that he's still here. But, yeah, I thought Oregon actually surprised me a little bit last year. They performed better than I thought they were going to. But I think, this is another team with a brutal schedule. I think, so far out of the 3 teams we've talked about, USC's had the more favorable schedule.
Definitely so.
Road game at Texas Tech. I know it's non-conference, and Texas Tech is so-so in the Big 12, but I think that's a tough road game. But, on the road at Washington, I've talked about how bad of an environment that is, and then on the road at Utah, those are 2 tough ones. They do get USC and Oregon State at home, but, and that's 4 teams right there that are potential losses. I just don't see they run through those with a clean slate. That's why I think we're going to end up seeing the top 2 teams in this conference have 1 to 2 losses.
Yeah.
We're not going to have anybody run the table here just because of the depth. We're only on team 3 here. We've got 2 or 3 more that I for sure like here.
That's what I was going to say. We're at 3 teams, and 3 I think can all win it, and none that I would be shocked if they win it. And I'm just curious if what they showed last year carries over to this year. Does Bo Nix continue? Because he actually, we talked about it. He looked
solid,
like a real quarterback. Now maybe he found the offense that he wanted. I think that probably is more a reflection on Auburn coaches. But he looked competent. He still wasn't great throwing the ball, but they didn't really ask him to make throws that he couldn't make.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it an option attack, but basically they used him as a batter and play action.
When their defense has gotten so much better the last few years.
And it's a track meet on defense. So much speed, so much turnover creation.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where I pull back a little bit too. When you're reliant on turnovers like that, if it's one of those years where you just aren't getting them, or a couple guys drop a couple interceptions here and there, what happens? We'll move on to another team now.
Yeah.
Now, this one, we will say, this is what happens. Do previews late. We probably would have put them at or near the top.
Yeah.
I think we'll still put them at or near the top. DeBoer did a great job taking over, got this program back where it was.
Really quick turnaround.
I'm just interested to see if they can sort of recapture that. The running back, we found out yesterday, going to be out.
Yeah,
for the
Cam
year.
Davis out.
Yeah. But Michael Penix's still there.
Yeah. I've loved him ever since he was at Indiana. So
always a difficult place to go to play football on the road here. What do you make of the Washington Huskies? Do we get another 11, 10-win season out of them here? Or was last year a little bit like Oregon, where maybe it's a little, teams have now seen them, know what they're going to do. Not 10, 11 wins.
Yeah, I think the 10 is possible. I think they're probably going to have at least one, maybe two losses in the conference. This is another team that I like to finish near the top, even despite the running back injury. But non-conference schedule is brutal. You open up the year hosting Boise State, and then
that was an interesting
week
one.
3 you got to go to Michigan State, which is no matter how good they are, that's a really tough place to go. But then you got a little bit of a you got Cal, but then at Arizona, Oregon after they're there by, but you get them at home. So if they can split the tough ones, Oregon, USC, Oregon State, I think they get through at most 2 losses in the conference, 7-2, repeating what they did last year, and maybe drop a non-conference. So I think they might get 9-3.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm interested because if they can win that Boise State game and that Michigan State game, I think they can. The Oregon game will be tough, but once again, Oregon's coming to them.
Yep.
It goes to that stretch in November where it's at USC, then Utah at home, and then at Oregon State. That's a tough little 3-game stretch there. And if they can get through those early ones, I know Boise isn't what they have been, but it's still a good football team. And on opening week, it's a little bit of a wild card. You don't know how your team's going to come out.
Yeah.
You don't know how they're going to come out. So I'm sure it'll be a tight, close game, even if it is in Washington. And then Michigan State, we haven't gotten to the Big Ten yet, but I don't think either of us think they're going to be great, but it'll be a difficult game to go there. We'll move to my favorite.
This team
Oregon
you love.
State and Jonathan Smith. Now, we're going to see what sort of offensive magic he can run because DJ's going to be the quarterback.
People are hating on DJ Uiagalelei. We'll see, but boy, this team overachieved last year, and it'll be really exciting to see if they can repeat. I think they're a dark horse. I think that could make a little bit of a run here. They have a pretty favorable schedule.
Well, I was going to say their schedule's favorable.
Their tough games are at home.
Yes.
Really, the only tough road game is the Civil War at Oregon at the end of the year. They get Utah at home. They get Washington at home. They get UCLA at home. Really set up if they can keep this momentum from last year. Could have a really special year.
Utah at home on a Friday night too. That'll be a difficult one for Utah. I'm interested if he can get the same offensive production out of DJ. We'll see where he sort of lies. Is it sort of a Bo Nix transportation? Jonathan Smith's been great on coaching offense and getting guys.
And their defense has
ready
played
to go.
amazing
and
last
their
year.
Defense, I think 3 years in a row has gotten better and better and better, which led to, I think 10 wins even overachieved my expectations from last year. I definitely had the over, but 10 was like, wow, this team really is really good. And they got hot towards the end last year, and it's a tough home game. But this is how deep this conference is. It's so many really good teams. And if DJ can reach that potential we saw, 3 years ago when everybody thought he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And one of the best quarterbacks in.
I think he's in a good spot here because this team's not going to ask as much from him. I think as far as
the pressure will be less.
Creating, because they're going to run the ball well. So I don't think it's going to be asking too much from him. And if they can just limit his mistakes, he could be kind of a weapon.
And I think all that pressure and at Clemson, one, you're there to continue that success. You're following the back-to-back Watson and Trevor Lawrence. You're supposedly the next in line there. I think it just sort of all snowballed. Now, he didn't help himself. They'll, take the money when he can because he's a clear case because he might not be an NFL draft pick now. So that Dr. Pepper money that he got before he had actually done anything actually really sort of helps him out here. But I am curious to see if Oregon State can continue on. And they're a dark horse one. I'm really looking. I'm also going to factor in, they're one of the teams that are sort of left without one of the chairs here in conference. And they aren't one of the ones, Stanford, Cal begging the ACC to take them.
Yeah.
They're sort of are left without a conference right now, so I wonder if they'll make it
Maybe they make it a special run their final year.
their special run. All right, let's go to UCLA. I think actually 9-4 last year was a really, really good season. We talked about it. Their schedule was brutal last year. They fought through it, got to 9-4. I thought played some good football. A lot of talent coming back. The one talent that's not coming back is the quarterback. I think it's sort of debatable what you sort of thought of Dorian Thompson-Robertson. It was sort of a hot and cold career. What do you make of this UCLA team? I will say it's a much easier schedule this year. If they had brought this schedule last year, I think they would have had a much better season.
Yeah, I just don't know if this team's talented enough to get above this pack of teams that we just talked about. They may be able to fall somewhere in the middle. They've got a true freshman and a transfer kind of battling for the quarterback job yet.
I will say we don't quite know who's going to play quarterback. And with Chip, it might be rotation all year long.
But, they've got, a few semi-easy games to kind of figure it out. Coastal, I wouldn't say is easy, but hosting them, and Coastal's not what they were a few years ago.
I would expect them to be.
Yeah, I think UCLA get that, and then San Diego State's kind of a pushover in NC Central. So they got some time to figure that out before a big road game at Utah. But like you said, pretty favorable schedule. The Utah road game and the USC are probably their two toughest, and at Oregon State. But they don't have Washington on their schedule, so they don't have Oregon. So we'll see how it falls. I'm thinking at best they repeat their finish from last year. But I think really the number is going to be 7 or 8 wins.
I'm interested because, we talked about Oregon's defense. I think this UCLA defense can be really, really good too. It's a little bit different than Oregon's. It's not totally based on speed. A lot of good guys in the interior and stuff like that. And, it seems weird to say, but Chip Kelly actually has built UCLA more defensively and run game. Traditional run game oriented than what those Oregon teams where he had a bunch of speed and could get outside. This has been more of a ground and pound type of team as Chip Kelly sort of morphed them, which I've actually been impressed how he's sort of done that. Their total's at 8.5. We mentioned 9 wins. I think they can get there. I'm kind of big on UCLA. I think they'll be better than people think. But, if they can't figure out the quarterback and they're, the quarterback's creating turnovers and causing problems, then I think that hurts their defense because I think their defense needs sort of that sort of medium to slow pace to grind away games. All right.
I think we've reached the next tier here.
I think we're at a cut line, though. I will say Washington State was a little spunkier than I thought they would be last year. Once again, well, it should just be said, other than maybe Cal and Stanford, a lot of these places are tough to go to on the road. One, everybody is so spread out. You got these all sitting up north in random weird places, and then you got the ones all down south sitting in random weird places. So there is the advantage there of Washington State having a pretty good home field. I thought they played better than I thought last year.
Yeah, Dickard's done a pretty good job there.
Yeah.
Started off rough.
Especially with, how he ended up getting the job. But what do you make of Washington State here? Do you think they'll hit that 7-win mark? 6.5 is their win total, so they're thinking in and around about the same.
I really don't think so. I think they start off with 2 really tough non-conference games for them at Colorado State and Wisconsin, and then I really only think there's 2 or 3 conference teams they're capable of beating. So I think we're going to have a little bit of a drop off this year. Maybe not so much on the fact of them, declining, but I think the level of competition is much higher this year.
Well, I think that's where they sort of fed off of. They were able to beat the teams that were below them that they should have beaten, and then they lost all the teams that were, of the higher tier. If they can continue that, they probably end up around the same record. But like we're going to see, I think a couple of these teams on the lower tier might be a little better than people think. So, I think 6 would be the mark, but I don't know if they can quite get there. We move to Cal. I think it's a coach we both like, but it's
he hasn't really done a whole lot here.
It's a little bit like San Diego State. Somehow the offense keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. The defense has been solid, throughout Justin Wilcox's career. But once again, I'm offense is returning, but it's one of those where I don't know if any of the players are any good. So what do you make of that? 4-8. I thought it was a difficult schedule last year, and then it was one of those things. Once you started to get beat down by midseason, it's just mojo is off, and you're just ready for the season to end. Can they improve? Can they make a Washington State jump and get to that sort of 6-7 win mark here?
Yeah, I really don't think so. I think we're going to see a lot more of the same this season. I don't know about you. I'm not too big on them. This may be Wilcox's last year here, because I really only have at most 2 games they can win in conference, which would match what they did last year, which would again miss a bowl game. So they got Auburn in non-conference. That's tough. Heck, North Texas may even be tough for Cal.
That's what I was going to say. These first 3 games, I'm scratching off the Auburn one, though. We'll get to them. I don't know if you scratch off Auburn quite yet, but the North Texas and Idaho game, I want to see if they can score points. If they can get into the 20s, heaven forbid the 30s, especially versus North Texas, whose defense is sort of mostly because of pace, but they should be able to score on North Texas. They should be able to score on Idaho. And if we're playing 20 to 13 games, once again, win or lose, then I'll know sort of where Cal stands. But if they can get to that sort of 30-point marker, then I'll know they at least have a little life on offense, and maybe, instead of winning 2 conference games, maybe they sneak 3 or 4 in there and get to that 6 win.
I mean, there would be some big time upsets, I think, because they got at Washington, at Utah, at Oregon, at UCLA. They host USC. They host Oregon State. I think those are all losses. And then you're only looking at 3 or 4 potential wins from the remaining ones, and even those I think would require some upsets. So
this would be one that home field doesn't bring a whole lot of favor. But I'm interested. All right, let's get to maybe my sleeper team here. Big improvement from last year. Granted, they didn't win a lot of games.
I think you had them overs last year, and did well because it was set at like 2.5, I believe.
Whenever it's 2.5, it's much easier. Granted, this year it's 5.5.
Yeah,
a little bit harder jump. I can see it get there, but it's going to be difficult. They're going to have to. They can lose that Miss State game, which I'm already marking off, but they can't afford to lose to a UTEP type team, which, UTEP not great, but I think the last 3 or 4 years probably around the same level as Arizona. But a big jump. I love Jed Fish. I think he runs good football, pro-style football, which I think gives some teams some problems here in the Pac-12, though more and more, coaches in there are running pro-type schemes in the Pac-12. Interested to see if they can make that leap. This would be like the Oregon State League. Maybe not to 10 wins, but can they continue to improve personnel-wise, winning-wise, and win, 7-8 games if they can make that jump?
I don't know. I think they could make the jump to 6.
Yeah. Get
to that bowl game. I like this team better than Cal, and I think their schedule sets up a little bit better than Cal's does as well. Some of their home games are a little harder, but I think their road games are winnable. I think Colorado's winnable, Arizona State's winnable, Stanford's winnable. So that's 3 right there that matches their conference wins last year. Get one upset somewhere in the rest, and you're at 6 wins, I think.
Can they sneak a win or 2 upset? They were close a couple times last year. Now, that was usually when teams were coming down to the desert.
Well, and, like they get UCLA in November, they get Utah in November. Those are, if those teams are cruising and they're not ready for Arizona.
Yeah. That's where maybe, if they've improved, if they've improved or it's just stalled out, or, I thought the Pac-12 was really, really top-heavy last year with about 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
And I think Arizona feasted a little bit on a soft non-conference and some of those teams, and maybe they won't quite get there I'm interested because I like the coach and I think he's built a solid program. But I'd be disappointed if they did something rash if they only won 4 or 5 games again, because that program when he took over was basically starting from nothing, rubble of ground of terrible.
Speaking of starting from rubble, nothing terrible, let's move on to Arizona State.
Well, I don't even know where to go here. Kenny Dillingham takes over. They've always been able to acquire talent. Whether that talent molds into wins,
or they acquire the talent legally.
Yes, I don't know. Honestly, this is a complete and utter wild card to me. Their win total sits at 5. I could see it because, like I said, Tempe, tough place to go.
Yeah.
Arizona State, legally or illegally, throughout their history, has always had talent. They just never seem to seize on said talent.
They've hit the portal well, which they lost quite a bit to the portal as well from players jumping
like
ship.
Rotation of good players out, good players in. What does it mean?
I'm hopeful. I think it's a good head coaching hire. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think this team is going to be one of the basement dwellers. I don't think they win more than a couple games here or there.
They're one I'm interested in. The Southern Utah game, wipe off, but then it's Oak State, Fresno State, USC. They go into that out Cal game. That's one of the games with Cal I'm talking about. If they can score points, Arizona State come in there. Maybe Arizona State starts 1-4. And I think if that happens, we just sort of see a snowball effect, and this thing, starts the rebuild sort of next year.
Yeah.
Wipe the program clean,
Yeah.
and we begin anew this year, building towards sort of next year. But like I said, they hit the portal. We don't know. All of a sudden, they could start ripping out wins. Teams could have trouble going, to Tempe late at night, sweating, cramping, and we get a lot of crazy, sort of games here. All right, let's go to Colorado.
Speaking of transfer portal.
Yeah, speaking of transfer portal, this whole team is new. A lot of it is from Jackson State.
Well, and Dion ran a bunch of guys off.
Yes. I don't quite know how to sort of handicap this. Their win total is 3. They're going to have a lot of hype and promotion. Dion brings that, but I want to see what level their players are at. His son's a quarterback. I want to see what level he's at. It certainly probably is better than what it was last year.
Oh, yeah.
That Carl Durrell coaching hires, nothing leaves you more than going up from that. But I can't really give a handicap on this. Their win totals sits at 3 now. That seems a bit optimistic. Their schedule pretty difficult here. I don't know if they can get to the 3. That seems.
I don't know if they get even one of their non-conference games.
I could very easily see 1-2 wins once again, and from this schedule. But
well, I look at the talent that he's brought. He's got a lot of athletic ability, but I think they lack some of the meat and potatoes, offensive line, defensive line. That's really going to help them have success in this conference, which is, we've talked about, stronger than it's been in years past. So we'll see what Sanders can do at quarterback with much tougher defenses. He's not going to be able to use his athleticism quite as much. The speed on these defenses is going to be much faster than what he's used to going against. A lot of people are on the over here. I'm not so sure. I think it's going to be right around that line. I think they might could get to 3. I think 4's pushing it a little bit.
Well, I think that's where you sort of handicap. It's what you think of Arizona State.
Yeah.
Because that's a possible bet.
Yeah, and Stanford and Arizona.
It's what you think of Arizona. Probably what you think of Colorado State. That would be the one win I think they should get.
Yeah. If they're going to get the over, they need that Colorado State win,
Correct.
I think, because I don't think they get 3 conference wins.
I don't think there's any way they can hang with the big boys here.
Unless they just get some weird, freak weather home game at Colorado, and that
But I don't think that suits them either. So, I even something like at Washington State, I would find it very difficult for them to find a win there. So I just 3 seems ambitious. 3 seems like a line bet up that I might be aggressive and grabbing down. You know how I sort of dislike taking anything under 3 because I think all football teams sort of make sure they can hover around 3 wins, but it's just I need to see what they're going to be. Stanford.
Another team run into the ground.
Yeah, how the mighty have fallen here. I have no idea what to make. This is a total.
It's almost a full rebuild here.
All sea change. Players all out. Coaches probably coaching style out. I mean, I wouldn't say definitely out because. I mean, I believe this guy still runs a pro-style offense. Probably not as run-heavy as Stanford has been in the past.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think this might be the worst team in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Even though they probably have had better talent than the other sort of bottom-tier teams we've talked about
I think,
the last couple of
I
years.
think it's going to come down to that next to last game of the season, them and Cal. We'll also see how they do at Colorado. That might be one of the ones Colorado can sneak up and get. Just because, like you said, this Stanford team's bad. Just poor management and bad coaching for the past 3 years. That's just progressively gotten worse. They finally made the change, but it's not going to turn around this year.
Yeah, I don't think so, and it might not turn around for a while if they can't find a conference. So, interesting. Pac-12. Sort of curious. Who do you have as your Pac-12 winner here?
You're going to like this one. I'm going to go with your team, Oregon State.
Well, now I know we're in trouble. I've also been eyeing Oregon State here, but I've also been,
I like their schedule.
I've also been eyeing UCLA as sort of a long shot, a deep one out.
I'm not as big on them.
Because Oregon State isn't quite as long shotty as they have been. Looking at sort of a deep one would be UCLA, but it'll be a good sort of last year here in the Pac-12. And we'll transition here to the Big 12. And
new teams in.
New teams
and
in.
then next year, teams out and even more teams in.
Yes.
So
total sort of sea change here. I guess we'll start off with the typical overrated, overhyped Texas Longhorns.
I kind of want to buy it this year, though.
Oh, God. Here we go. You've been drinking the Steve Sarkisian juice. Or you've just been up too long and you don't quite know what you're saying. But
this is a really talented football team.
They say that every year. I think Quinn Ewers will probably be transferring in 2 weeks. So wherever he goes and we have to hear new hype, you think Bo Nix has been around a while. I think Quinn Ewers is going to be like at every school there ever was. I don't think it's totally been decided between Arch and Quinn, but
I think it's going to be Quinn.
Yes. But who knows? It probably, knowing Steve, it probably will flip-flop for the first
we'll see how
8 games of the year before he
maybe
fully decides.
Maybe what he'll do is he'll start his one he likes less than the other at first, let him get destroyed at Alabama, and then put the other guy in.
Well, that's what I was going to do, because
put a scapegoat out there against Bama.
that was sort of their, Sark's done it game where Bama came there. They played him tight, and Bama sort of snuck off with a win. And then Texas proceeded to do Texas teams and lose to pretty much every Big 12 team that punched them in the mouth. Literally, they can blame Quinn Ewers' injuries all they want. Still not overly impressed with him. We'll see what Arch Manning, can do if he plays any. But
You think either one of them sticks around if they don't get to play?
Oh, no way. Certainly, Arch probably, there's a better chance that he sticks around just because he has a name and
when it's his first year.
Yeah, it doesn't really
He
matter.
could be the guy next year.
I don't think there's any chance that Quinn sticks around if he's not playing. The thing I'll say is, this is a pretty difficult schedule here for Texas.
Yep.
Opening with Rice, blah, but, at Alabama, you mentioned it. Wyoming, while not a great team, probably not a fun team to play.
Yeah.
Who's going to sit there and not play enjoyable football and smack you in the mouth a little bit. That weird game at Houston, I don't know what bribed them into going to Houston, but I can guarantee you they'll be up for that game and beating Texas, and then they're at TCU, at Iowa State towards the end of the year.
Iowa State, they're kind of falling off now.
You say that, but it's always difficult to go there and play football. And this is when Iowa State wins football games when no one expects them to. I can't totally buy Texas here. I think it'll be similar to what they were last year. Maybe they can get into that 9-win territory, but I think it's 8-9 wins here for Texas.
Yeah,
and probably goodbye, Sark.
See, I'm on the other end. I think this is a year they may pull away. I look, I could be fooled again, but I think talent across the board in this Big 12, there's been a big shakeup with teams. I think far and away this is the most talented team. I don't think Oklahoma's built it back quite just yet.
Well, you probably can guess where I'm going to go. Probably either purple side, actually. So, but I think their schedule too difficult, and more than talent, I just don't trust Sark.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they can get down to 2 conference losses. I think they get to 10.
All right, I was going to say their win total sits at 9.5. Would you
I
aggressively bet the 9.5 win total?
Well, I think you're chalking Bama up as a loss.
Yes.
I don't think they can get that one on the road. No. I think they can run through it and maybe just the one loss at TCU.
You don't think there's a slip up at Baylor, at Houston, BYU, at TCU?
Kansas State at home.
Kansas State. You know that one's coming.
I don't know. That's a good line by Vegas there because I think it's 9 or 10.
I can already tell you right now. I'm telling you, we're putting a big bet on Kansas State when they're getting 13 points and Texas is playing that. I'm going, Kansas State's just going to run the ball up the middle on them the whole game. All right, let's go to Oklahoma. Quite a drop-off, and then quite a mouthy little Brent Venables off-season for really taking a team that Lincoln Riley built into a 10-win offensive juggernaut, and they weren't particularly good at offense and were terrible again on defense.
They have been recruiting well. They brought in a lot of guys from the transfer portal. Hopefully got some new talent in here, but
I'm curious if this goes similar to, I think this team's not going to be very good once again. If this goes similar again, you think Venables sticks around or he gets the quick hook? Because I think Oklahoma quick hooks him, especially when they move into the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go into the SEC with, no momentum, and maybe if they repeat what they did last year, they want to make a change, going with a fresh start into the SEC. But I think if he can get to 8-9 wins this year, they keep him and see if he can keep building that up. I don't like Oklahoma either. I don't think they finished top 4 in this conference.
I'm interested with that SMU game. I think we'll sort of see where Oklahoma sits in that SMU game. SMU, good, but not great.
Yeah.
But if Oklahoma is, tooth and nail with SMU, I think we're going to have some problems. And they also go at Cincinnati, which might be a little bit difficult game early as well. We'll see where they are. I'm not big on Oklahoma State this year. This one, I will say I'm big on just because I'm always big on them. Because
I like their system. I like their coach.
No one ever rates them, and then they win their 9-10 games by basically just doing football things that football has been done since the 1900s. I think they regress back a little bit here, but it's a little hard to say because they are pretty plug and play defensively and offense. Same with, Chris Kleiman, who was sort of, I don't want to say the start of North Dakota State's dominant run, but really sort of put his spirits on it. And since he's come here, it's been really sort of similar. Maybe that COVID year they weren't great, but after that, they've just been a solid team that's hard to beat.
Yeah, they're going to play defense. They're going to smack you in the mouth. They're going to run the ball. I'm interested to see if they run the ball as well. You know, they lost a great talent in Deuce Vaughn that won them some games on his own, I think. But, you know, the way they play, we could have a guy step in and
that's what it's every year,
they're going to have somebody.
Lose a Deuce Vaughn, and then we go, that running back at Kansas State, he's really good.
Well, and you've got a leader in Will Howard returning that he knows the system well. He knows how to play, and, they've got a favorable non-conference schedule. I think that Missouri game's winnable. Missouri's, basement dweller, I think, in the SEC now. They get TCU at home. So we'll see. I think I like this team better than Oklahoma. I think I think
they're a much better team than
I put Kansas State in the championship game. I don't know if they can win it, but I think they can finish top 2 for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they can repeat, but I'm always going to side on their side because I just like their system and what they do. A team that is coming off a playoff appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Sonny Dykes' second season here at TCU. They lose a lot on offense.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say about Sonny Dykes, I don't totally worry about offense because he's been able to sort of just manufacture offense. I mean, you saw it last year. The quarterback that ended up winning all the games for him wasn't even the quarterback that was supposed to be their starting quarterback. Is there... I think you always say there's a drop off from going 13-2, and losing in the national championship game. But can they sort of repeat here and win this Big 12 again? I would find it difficult that they went 9-0 in conference again.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're dropping 1, maybe 2, at least 2. I think conference games. There's too much. Too many pieces that they're going to have to replace. They're going to have to find their chemistry. I mean, just, running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, they lost it all. They got a little bit of their defense back, but this conference is going to be, a little different. Like, I think it's more top heavy this year. I think you've got, and I think they do fall in the top 4 to 5 teams for sure. I don't think they'll drop below that. But I think we're going to see them get 7-2 in the conference.
What I'm interested here is, Dykes took over last year from Gary Patterson, and there were still a lot of the Gary Patterson sort of defenders on there.
That's true.
And not all of them leave, but it starts to be a slow, steady stream of sort of what it was sort of the perfect storm last year where Gary Patterson's systems on defense and players sort of merged with Sonny Dykes' offensive, I just would say brilliance. He's been able to do offense for, a billion years here. And I wonder if the defense, which, still gave up big plays last year, starts to fall further and further, and we get more of sort of what we've seen from Sonny Dykes' teams, which is a lot of 50 and 60-point games. And we don't have, the team with strong corners who can play man-to-man, who have linebackers who cover, the whole field, and, big, strong defensive ends who can blitz off the corner and just create, havoc plays. And we get a little more, Sonny Dykes high-scoring type games. Now, that might be 2 or 3 years down the road. And he sits in California, he sits in Texas and can recruit, those type of defenders. But he's never sort of been able to do that.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a drop-off. I mean, they're going to sweep their non-conference, I believe. But I think 9 wins total, maybe the most for this team.
Interesting little Texas one, too, in that Houston sort of SMU back-to-back there. All right, Baylor, disappointing last year. But I don't totally know if it was disappointing. I think they lost some games they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And you're sort of judging off the year before where they probably won more games than they should have. And it's probably, I think, it'll be about a happy medium this year. It probably won't be the highs that they had 2 years ago under Dave. But it probably won't fall as low as it did last year. I'm looking about, 8 wins tops, probably a 7-8 win season here for Baylor.
Yeah, I think slight improvement. They're going to keep continuing to build up a little bit here. I think they definitely improve off last year. This could be a team that could jump up and maybe finish ahead of TCU.
Yes.
I think they're going to be kind of in that same range, 8 or 9 wins.
I'm curious if they get their mojo working like they did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a dark horse play on the Big 12 here, especially if, Texas and Oklahoma both drop off. Then you're looking at Baylor maybe stepping back up. I don't know if they can reach what they did 2 years ago, but I certainly think they'll be more in the mix. And like we said, they lost a couple games last year that they probably shouldn't have, that they should have been winning.
Yeah, they get to host Texas pretty early on, but back-to-back road games at Kansas State, at TCU.
That's not going to be a fun end of the year. And then West Virginia comes in there. Now, whatever. We think of West Virginia, but it's still a football team. Probably one that overachieved a little bit last year.
Yeah.
I think we were both pretty down on them early. Now, I think we sort of turned late and sort of saw them play good football. I think they drop off a little more this year. But
see, I'm the opposite.
You're thinking they're going to continue.
I think this is a team that could potentially jump up to top 3 in the conference.
Yeah.
I think they could jump a TCU and a Baylor. We'll see. They bring back a lot of starters on offense, and I like the way they're coached.
Yeah, I will say Joey McGuire did a really, really good job last year, and if that continues, maybe Texas Tech sort of rebuilds himself into a solid program who can cause other Big 12 teams some problems, which is sort of what they were under Mike Leach. And stuff. So it's certainly capable.
They know how to put points on the board.
I don't have a good feel for them, I probably should say. And it feels like they overachieved last year. Like, I feel like them and Baylor probably switch places a little bit this year. Like, maybe they drop to the sort of 6-win mark. Baylor climbs up to the sort of 8-win mark here. But it'll be interesting to see what Joey McGuire does in his second season. I think this one is probably the most interesting one. Speaking of games that they should have won that they lost, and then totally, I don't even know what the last half of the year was.
Yeah.
Quidditch. What do you make of here? Because there's talent here. I'm curious if Gundy's sort of run his course.
It kind of looked like he threw the towel in last year, and just kind of when things started not going their way, he was just like, season's over.
Yeah, as soon as it started to slide, it slid, and there was just nothing. But, like I said, there's talent. They could theoretically be a contender here in the Big 12. I don't know what made them do that, because they were a contender in the Big 12 up until I think late October. We had that big money game. We bet on Texas on them, and then basically after that they seemed to give up a lot of points and stop scoring them.
I think their schedule's a good thing going for them. They don't have Texas. They don't have TCU. Yes. So they don't have Baylor. They got some winnable games. I think their toughest one is, they get Kansas State at home. They get Oklahoma at home. They get Kansas at home. I think this is a really favorable schedule. I think they definitely improve it for last year. Potentially make a conference title game. I think they're going to be up there in that top cluster.
I'm eyeing them for a little bit of a dark horse run. The only thing that concerns me is maybe, it's going to be almost 20 years for Gundy now.
Yeah.
Is it sort of time to sort of freshen up the place here? And last year sort of seems like maybe, but the talent's there to at least contend here in the Big 12. Okay, next up, the newcomer here, Central Florida. I will want to say, well, I probably should just say, just a Gus Malzahn season. Wins that they sort of pulled out of their butt, and losses of games they totally threw away and mismanaged. I think it'll probably be similar. This team has, once again, a lot of talent and a lot of speed. I think it'll give some Big 12 teams more problems than they think. I also think going to Central Florida will be difficult for some of these Big 12 teams, especially. I'm eyeing this one. If they get a lot of those noon games, I think it could be a little bit West Virginia-ish where, Big 12 teams have trouble coming across all the way into Orlando, starting out at 12, and UCF just starts, blitzing and playing fast here. I'm curious what you think they'll be in and around here in their opening Big 12 season.
Yeah, I think they're going to be the best newcomer out of the four newcomers to the conference, and I don't think they repeat their record from last year, but I think 8 wins is very doable.
That's what the win totals. It looked low to me. It's at 6.5.
Yeah, I think they get that.
I think 7 is a definite, and we're looking more in the 8-9, depending how things go. Kent State probably definitely win. That the Boise State's a little bit probably is the separator between 7-8 wins there. But I think this team is good. Gus Malzahn.
No Texas, no TCU.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a great coach, but I call him one who finds ways to win football games and is always going to be 7, 8, 9 wins.
Yeah.
Here, and especially with this,
all of those numbers are above their win total.
Exactly. So I'm probably hedging on our a little bit here on our future show next week, but you could probably guess where I'm going to sit on this one.
Yeah.
I think this team has too much talent and speed. I'll be curious to see if the defense can create as many turnovers as it has in the past.
I mean,
every time they've stepped up, they've been able to hang with teams like the teams in the Big 12.
I don't think we have a playoff team in this conference this year. I think conference champion's going to have 2 or 3 losses.
Yeah.
I think this UCF team is an upset away from being right there with the top dogs in the conference. I don't think they finish that high, but I think they have the opportunity to be right there on the outside looking in and finish in 4th or 5th in the conference.
You talked about it. The one I could see would be Texas, but I think there's a coaching handicap that might hold them back a little bit. Like, if you were telling me, say, a Nick Saban or a Brian Kelly were taking over Texas this year, I'd probably throw them in the mix, but it's not. It's just the understudy who has not been successful anywhere he goes. All right, we'll move to Iowa State here. Basically a regression of what had sort of been a continuing trend here for Iowa State. I talked about them still being a difficult place to at least go on, home, but you seem to be a little bit more down on Iowa State than I was, this year.
I think the stink around the program with the gambling and their starting quarterback last year being suspended and that, I think it's just going to just cloud this team. And I give them 2 more losses than what I was already giving them, and I think they could fall almost to the bottom of the conference.
Yeah, I don't know if they fall to the bottom. I think they sort of maxed out their bottom last year at 4-8. I know the gambling stuff is a little bit, but a lot of those guys, I know it was their starting quarterback.
He wasn't amazing.
That's sort of where I'm at. All those guys in that, where it's not exactly like I call them world beaters and must-haves, and it's going to sink the whole program. I think you sort of plug and play. Now, this is probably the epitome of maybe take your SEC job when you have it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying is Matt Campbell missed his window a couple years ago to really get paid.
I don't think anybody thinks he's the genius that I don't think we ever thought it was.
No.
I think we have shows 3 or 4 years ago stating I'm not sure Matt Campbell's all that great, and Brock Purdy turning into a great quarterback as soon as he goes to the NFL probably sums that up. But I don't think it falls much past 4-8. I do think Matt Campbell's just one of those coaches who sort of can keep them hovering. Now, how much the scandal plays in, I will say factors. And adding, maybe they drop a little bit because of, a BYU and a Central Florida and a Houston being in the mix, which all are programs I probably rate a little more highly than Iowa State. Maybe not Houston. That sort of depends on who's randomly coaching them at the time.
I look at their schedule. I only see one game that they can win.
Yeah,
That's at Cincinnati.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't put the Northern Iowa one on there because that one's always a field goal game. No matter what.
Iowa's tough, non-conference. I think this team wins 2 or 3 games, and that's it.
It'll be interesting to see sort of if Matt Campbell can sort of resurrect them. Speaking of teams who
resurrected,
Lance Leopold, I think a favorite of our coaching line.
Back in his MAC days.
Yes. Pulled Kansas to 6 wins. Once again.
That was another over-under at like 2.5 for 3.
That's correct. Now, I think if you had put it at 5.5, I probably would not have taken it. 6 wins. That was a hell of a season, and actually, this team played really good football for the whole year.
A Heisman candidate at quarterback.
I mean, everything was good here. Does it fall back a little bit? Because this was such... I just remember a preview show, I was like, I think they'll win over. I think they can grab, top end 4 wins.
Yeah.
They won 6 and were in, basically a majority of the games they played. Mm-hmm. Does it keep going up, or do we get a little bit of regression here? The team returns. So is this a dangerous team, I think, would be my question.
I don't know about dangerous. I think they're going to be about what they were last year. I think they're going to be in games.
Yeah.
They may win a couple that they're not supposed to. They could lose a couple they're not supposed to. I think they're right there. Bowl eligible is the line. I think they get to 6. I don't know how much more they can get than that, though.
Yeah. I'm curious how, the additions in the Big 12 affect them as well. Once again.
Well, we both like UCF.
Yes.
Maybe UCF isn't as good, and they get
Correct.
that win. We'll see what BYU is.
Correct.
I don't know what to make of BYU.
Yeah, it's always a wild card. Once again, Houston's probably more of a wild card than BYU. At least BYU tends to win games. Houston tends to find ways to lose them. Their win total sits at 6.5. I probably won't be aggressive on that this year, just because I think the Big 12 is deeper. I think their schedule's a little bit tougher than last year. Illinois is going to be a difficult game. I know Nevada's picked to suck, but, at Nevada's never easy. That's not a easy place to go, even if you are a Kansas team whose talent has improved. So I'm interested to see how this goes, but, I can't say enough about Lance Leopold. Dragging 6 wins out of this one. Once again, BYU, we move to
another newcomer.
Typical BYU season. It's going to be a solid football team, which BYU always is. I think it's one of those. Is this a solid football team that can find ways to win and ends up with like 10 wins, or is it, a BYU team that sort of falls apart and wins more in the 7 range? It's hard to sort of say what you're getting from BYU.
Yeah, I think this schedule is going to be a little bit of a shock to them. Yes. I don't think they're going to be used to this much competition. And like you said, the Big 12 is deeper this year, and their schedule is pretty brutal, not to mention the road game at Arkansas in non-conference. So we'll see what happens, but I think...
The only thing I can't totally get a hold on, I mentioned it was Central Florida, but I think they will have a big home field advantage too. Teams going up into BYU. It's a difficult place to play. You're going to be playing weird Saturday night games in BYU.
Yeah,
the crowd will be
9 o'clock kickoff.
and the weather will be what a lot of these teams are not used to. Especially once winter hits around. I'm not sure how TCU, Texas Tech are going to love going up into the mountains in Utah.
But, they're at TCU this year. They're at Texas this year. They're at Oklahoma State. And they got to go across country to West Virginia. I don't think they get many wins out of those teams that I just named. I think maybe the 6-win window is around where they're going to be.
We'll see where they are when they play Arkansas. And if they can hang with them, I think this might be sort of an 8-win team, and if they can't hang with them, then they'll probably struggle. But it's just they have they have what BYU always have: experienced, solid football players. It's just a little bit of it is how the breaks sort of go for BYU. You know, a kick here or there, an interception, fumble here or there, probably determines 7 wins or 9 wins. We're going. I'm curious if you still have hope for your coach Neil Brown here. They seem to be getting worse and worse each year. I'm curious how long they hold on to Neil, but I thought it was really sort of disappointing last year. And, quarterback sort of injuries, but I mean they came in with like 3 quarterbacks and none of them.
Yeah.
Either they got hurt or none of them turned out to be good. They didn't turn out to be good, and even sort of my home strategy of noon games there didn't even work all that well. This team just seems to be one that's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm a little worried they are one of the ones that sort of feels the attrition of Big 12 additions and falls even further.
Yeah,
back.
like you said, I think they're really gonna hurt with the newcomers coming into the conference because I think they fall below all 4 of those newcoming teams. 3.
Yeah.
I'm not big on Cincinnati, but I think
that's still a good program.
Yeah, I think they're going to fall quite a bit, and we'll be lucky to get 3 or 4 wins.
Yeah. You think Neil Brown makes it through the year if they're sitting 3 or 4? I'm curious how West. I know some people don't know, but West Virginia fans are just about as insane as anybody. So. We'll move to Houston. Our friend Dana remains.
Yeah.
This team lost a lot on offense. Basically the most underachieving team. Basically just a Dana Holgerson team. Can look as good as anybody and can look as bad as anybody. Series to series, not just game to game. Literally series to series. I think they're where they belong. I think Houston always sort of belonged in the Big 12 after the Southwest Conference, folded up. This is a huge school with, a lot of money and a lot of talent. But can Dana make this transition and play with these teams here?
I don't think so. I think this may be his way out as well. Ironically, if we just came off talking about West Virginia, I don't see how they can navigate and even get to the 8 wins they got last year. Definitely not the 8 wins they got last year.
And that was disappointing, might I say.
Yeah, I see it most 4 wins on their schedule. They've got some tough non-conference games. Well, one tough non-conference game, their opener, which is not a good way to start the season. But yeah, I don't see a lot of wins on this schedule. I don't think they make a bowl game, and I think they fire Dana Holgerson.
Yeah, that's what I don't know if I'm hoping, but, I'm a little sick of the Dana Holgerson era here at Houston. Yeah. I didn't love the hire when they made it. I thought he underachieved at West Virginia with the talent that he brought in. And once again, he's brought in good talent to Houston. It seems to always underachieve. Even to that team that made the title game 2 years ago. They basically brought back that same team last year, and it ended up going 8-5 and losing a bunch of games that it shouldn't have. This is one that I see dropping off and maybe being fodder here in the Big 12, and then we sort of get a new era as sort of the Big 12. Some of the new teams are in, but I think the big rebrand starts next year, and we get sort of the real Big 12, and Houston sort of restarts their era there. Probably brings in a high level coach as they kick off the Big 12. We'll move to Cincinnati, the last newcomer in here. This is going to be a bit of a hard read. Scott Satterfield takes over here. Interesting here because I think we both liked him at App State. I think we both thought the Louisville was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was always his fault, but they didn't seem to win as much as I thought they should. But I don't know if they had the talent necessarily to win. I don't know if you blame him for that or the mess that Louisville sort of has become, both in basketball and football for the last couple of years. But he bails out of there, goes to Cincinnati. What do you make here of this Cincinnati? We already heard you sort of mention it. You think they're going to be down. They aren't going to win 9, but I think they'll hover, 6-7 wins here.
Yeah, Emory Jones, we'll see what he can do at quarterback. I don't think it's going to happen year one for Satterfield here. I think they'll be lucky to get to a bowl, but I've got them near the bottom of most of my projections. Maybe better than West Virginia, Houston, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he does here. Like I mentioned, the mixed bag at Louisville. I loved him at App State. I love the way he played football.
I do like the hire. I mean, I don't hate it. I think he's going to get it. Oklahoma and Texas are going to move out. There's going to be some weaker teams moving in. Give it a couple years, they could potentially be back.
I think his style of football sort of fits Cincinnati more than it fit Louisville. I think it never sort of fit Louisville, who still has sort of the Petrino feel and want. They want to be basically terrible at defense and just score a lot of points on offense. And Satterfield's more the exact opposite, basically just wants to run the ball and beat you up across the lines. I think that fits sort of Cincinnati's style of play, which they've been doing for a very long time since, Brian Kelly was basically there. But interesting Big 12, especially with these new additions and Texas and Oklahoma sort of leaving. Who do you have coming out of the Big 12 this year?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to have to go with Texas.
Going with Texas.
I just think the talent's going to prevail this year.
I think I'm giving you a combo package of Oak State, Kansas State.
I will say if, on our future show, if Oak State's getting some good value, I think their schedule benefits them greatly, and they could get them in the conference game, but I like Texas.
I'll go back and tell you take that 2 months ago because they've been bet down a little bit. So if you can magically find a line from 2 months ago and slip it in there, I do that. All right, we're off to college and into the NFC. A couple NFL notes I wanted to talk to you about before we got into our preview. I guess it's news, sort of news, but the Colts gave Jonathan Taylor permission to seek a trade. Everything I've read said the Colts want a first-round pick or a early second.
Weren't they just talking down how he doesn't need to be paid, but now they're talking him up like he's worth this?
That's where I sit in this conundrum of, is this really news? Because I don't think any team.
Good luck getting a first.
Yeah, no one's giving him first. I doubt anyone's giving him an early second because his contract is up, so you have to pay him. No one's going to pay him over what I think $10 million would be generous.
I have a theoretical that I would find hilarious. Let's see a Taylor Barkley swap.
Don't get traded and don't get paid. I don't know. I think they purposely gave him permission to seek a trade so he can find out. He basically
so he gets a wake-up call?
Yeah, he has essentially what the Giants did. Fine, see what you can.
I mean,
and you have no value on the open market.
It's just the way it is right now. Running backs are just not valued that high, and they can go out and get one that can do the job just as well for cheaper. Yeah. I think some changes need to be made. I think their rookie deals need to be a little shorter than other positions so they can get their money while they're in their prime. But that hasn't happened yet, and this is a business, and the teams are going to make business decisions. Yeah. And it sucks for the running backs, but that's what the way it is. Unless some crazy team, and I went through them, and I was like, I don't think anybody's crazy enough to give up a first or second to make that push. Well, and
You looked at it. Philly already picked up their running back. I was trying to think of contending teams. San Francisco's probably good. I doubt Seattle with the way they're building their team, and basically they drafted a running back, so they don't need to pay one.
Are you thinking maybe an in-season trade after an injury?
But who's giving up a first or second? Early second is what they said. Now, maybe if they drop their asking price, because I don't know how much they, really want.
Do they want to hang on to him?
I think they'd be willing to franchise him next year and, give him $8 million and go year to year because they're sort of in transition too with Anthony Richardson. So
I don't think they're expecting to compete for a title this year either. So they're perfectly fine,
That's correct. So
with whatever. If he,
that's why I was like, it's kind of news. It's kind of not news. I wanted to go to the second point here. I started my futures, and I began looking, through NFC, and I'm just curious. I was trying to rack my brain. Have you ever seen a conference throughout NFL being this week? Literally, I looked, and I was like, there is one team that I would be like, oh yeah, they're really good, and two teams that I'm like, possibly. One of them doesn't even have a quarterback currently. Maybe the early 90s on the AFC side of things when the Bills made like 4 Super Bowls. But, I mean, there were still teams that popped up in there. Miami, Denver, San Diego. There were talented teams. I've never seen the NFC this week where literally one team. Any others that would be bad, I would not be shocked by. I've never seen something like this.
Well, and I'm not even big on that one team.
Yeah.
So I could see a scenario where almost all of these teams could win it. There's one team I'm down on more than the others, but I think there's 3 potential winners in this division.
I went through every NFC team, and I'm like,
all the worst are in this division.
Yeah.
Well,
but that's even if you go west, south, east. Basically, any team but the Eagles I was looking at wouldn't shock me if they finished under 500. Other than San Francisco, maybe. But if they name Sam Darnold their quarterback, I begin to become a little nervous there, too.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I say that
well, that's why the Eagles' odds are so juiced to get all the way, just because.
I say that because we moved to this division, which I honestly, if a team won this conference with 6 wins, it wouldn't totally stun me. So let's move to the NFC South. I think theoretically you have to win more than 6 games, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know if any of these are winning any non-conference game.
They do get to play the worst division in the AFC.
Yeah,
they get to play the AFC South.
They're all saying they get to play this division and they're trying to win games.
And they get to play their own division.
Yes. Let's start out with Atlanta. I will say skill position-wise, this is the most talented team. There's a minor problem, though, that we have no clue what this quarterback's going to be. It wasn't great to close the season.
Yeah.
They're giving us a lot of commie rag about how good it's been in preseason. I don't ever buy that. This is a team you like out of this division.
I do like this team.
I will say, skill position-wise, they're really good. I think their defense is a little bit overrated. They have one really, really good corner who was banged up all last year, which then their defense fell apart with their offense. We're talking Atlanta Falcons here. What do you make of this Falcons team this year?
Well, it's an interesting scenario here because they have one of the cheapest defenses and one of the cheapest offenses last year, but they still managed to get 7 wins. I think that's really goes to show. I think they made a good coaching hire, Arthur Smith. He's got 7 wins his first 2 years. I think this is the year he needs to make the jump.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if he goes down. Yeah, but I mean, this is also a team that in the past couple of years they've spent more money on the hard cap on players that aren't even on this roster anymore. I mean, they gave Matt Ryan a bunch of money last year. He wasn't on this team. They paid Julio Jones last year. He wasn't on this team. Just money everywhere not being spent on this team. They're finally starting to slowly shift that back. They're still not quite there. They're still paying a bunch of guys that aren't on this team. But they were in 13 one-score games last year. Some of them went their way. Some of them didn't go their way. I like the defensive additions. You talked about their defense. I like Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree both coming in on the defensive line. That should help them get a little bit more pressure and help their coverage out a little bit. And I like Ritter coming in as a clear-cut starter. I think that's going to give him some confidence and maybe a little bit more chemistry with this offense.
I think that's where you sort of handicap it.
Yeah.
You do a couple things. Dupree, I think probably you'd say mixed bag with the Titans. I don't even know if you'd say mixed bag. He is what he is. He's a speed rusher off the edge.
Yeah.
If you give him a free release, he'll cause havoc. If you got a big guy who can knock him back, he's not going to do much. Campbell, who was one of the best defensive tackles, starting to get a little bit long in the tooth. It's, how long can he stay healthy? And
I thought they were both good value pickups. So.
Definitely. Certainly to build, depth along that defensive line where I thought they were weak last year. We'll see if Tyrell, who was a standout his rookie year, last year, mixed bag because he started having the hamstring trouble. They need him. That's... And you talked about the one-score games, and that's where I get a little bit concerned because
it easily could have bounced the other way.
They're going to play one-score games because Arthur Smith.
Well, being a Titans fan, I know his offense.
Yes.
They're going to play defense. They're going to run the ball on basically every first down ever.
And they have they're deep at running back, and that's where I get a little concerned too because one, they have Kyle Pitts, who's basically the biggest waste I've ever seen of talent out here on the Falcons. They don't ever throw him the ball. London I thought looked really good last year, at least as an explosive downfield threat. They got guys, Hollins also last year with the Raiders, I thought played pretty good football. If you're in one-score games, that's where I get nervous with Ritter. Behind, you saw it with Mariota. It's just, if you need that drive, can Desmond Ritter lead that? Now, if you think he can, this team, I think we're going to go through and everybody's going to be a contender for this division. But I think you probably put them in, I think Carolina probably a little bit ahead of the other two, depending sort of where you feel the Saints are.
Yeah.
I think that's a coaching issue more than a personnel issue. But I want to see Ritter do it. I liked Desmond Ritter in college. I think he's a solid quarterback who can be an NFL quarterback. I just didn't see it last year. And, it's hard to gauge, too, because you talked about Arthur Smith. He just seems to... He's conservative by nature on offense anyway, and if he doesn't think the quarterback can do it, it gets even more conservative. Now, how much of that was Mariota? I don't know, but like I said, those last couple games that Ritter played, he didn't want to throw passes there either, and you're in one-score game. So I'm sort of a mixed bag on this team. I think they've improved, and like I said, skill position-wise on the running back and receivers.
Yeah.
They have a lot of talent. I don't know where it sits with Desmond Ritter at quarterback. And I don't think they're very deep on the defensive side of the ball. So if they have injuries like they did last year, it makes it hard to play their style of football. All right, we'll go to the next one up here. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. I think the other team that contend, we're a bit sort of split here. You're a little more Atlanta. I'm a little more Carolina. It's sort of similar, except it's flipped here a little bit. A lot of skill position guys on defense. I think this, they were last year too. I think Carolina will be one of the best defensive teams in the NFL. Offense is where you get a little bit nervous here. Rookie quarterback. They traded their one real threat.
Not a lot of weapons at offense. A bunch of used up guys, I think.
A bunch of used up guys would be where it was, but I think they'll do the Atlanta thing, run the ball a lot. Miles Sanders in there. It'll be interesting to see where Young's at. I like Young a little more than Ritter. Obviously, you look at their draft status, but it's hard to see how this team wins games because their offense, you don't know where it sits.
Yeah.
Whereas, the Falcons, it's sort of give or take where their defense sort of sits.
Yeah, I'm just not as big on this Panthers team, and I think a lot more pressure is going to be put on Young here than on Ritter in Atlanta. I think there's a bunch of other pieces in Atlanta that can help get that offense going. I think if Young can't perform, this offense can't perform.
New coach as well. Frank Reich goes in there.
Yeah.
Sort of a mixed bag in Indianapolis. Great offensive coordinator at Philadelphia. I thought he did a good job early at Indianapolis. And, then personnel-wise, they started giving him garbage.
They do have a decent offensive line. If they can run the ball, maybe give Bryce Young a little bit of relief here. I'm just worried, any given hit could knock him out.
Yes. I do worry a little bit about that, but I think they'll be cautious and protect him. And I just, in this division, now I don't foresee them making long playoff runs, but I think defensively they can sort of hold down the fort and scratch enough games here to sort of be, I mean, last year they almost scratched out this division if they hadn't, if Sam Darnold had not have melted down in the second half of the Tampa Bay game, they would have been the one in the playoffs. I think they can do similar type thing here in this division. I should probably in this division. I don't think they are long for the playoffs. I don't think any of these teams, whichever one comes out, is long for the playoffs. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Bucks here. I think this one will probably be definite.
I think
we're getting.
I think we both think this team is the worst in the division.
I think the linebackers are getting old.
And they officially named Baker Mayfield as their starter.
I think that sort of set things up. Their line's going to be brutal. Basically they're throwing Baker in there to be a sacrificial lamb. Then they'll probably sixth game in, they try out the Florida kid and see if he can do anything. And this is a rebuild from what it is. They still got a handful of pieces from the defense, but I'm curious how engaged they will be once they watch this offense.
This is a team that 2 years ago went all in to win a championship, and they're paying the price for it now. They've got guys that their money's coming due.
They should probably shake hands with the Rams because it's about the same thing.
Well, they put off Evans's money. Yes. He only got paid $5 last year. He's getting over $20 this year. They've got a few other guys that their contracts are coming due.
Regression too with Evans. I thought you started to see him be a little old.
And you wonder how much he's going to be in it this year once this team starts to perform poorly. And like you said, brutal offensive line. The only thing that really kept them statistically alive last year was the fact that Tom Brady was their quarterback. Baker Mayfield, horrendous at taking sacks. It's not going to be a good combo. Like you said, there's no way he makes it.
I don't think you have to qualify it as horrendous at taking sacks. I think you can say just horrendous at quarterback. I think that's okay.
And the other thing is they don't really have a great running back room to support him here. I think just offensively it's atrocious. They have a few weapons here and there still on defense. But they're not going to be able to outscore teams. And, even if their defense holds teams to, 20-something points a game, I don't think they score enough to win. Well, there was,
2 years in a row, White has sort of regressed. I think we thought he was, sort of an all-everything Troy Polamalu type. He was really bad last year. Now, Levante David, too, must be 150. Still productive at middle linebacker, but you wonder when that starts to, fall back. Corners were okay last year, but I think they'll drop off a little bit here because I think that defensive line, granted, Vita Vea is still a mass, but I don't think they'll have the edge rushing that they had, I should say when they were peaking towards Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, my thoughts are I think they throw Baker out there. If he doesn't work miracles by week 4, I think this is one of the first teams in the NFL to start tanking.
Yeah, I think it's a quick tank. I think it's a grab and see if Kyle Trask can, capture lightning in a bottle and then go after, the Caleb Williams tank stretch to see if you can grab Caleb.
Yeah.
I think they'll be quick because I think a lot of these guys also next year, they start to cut.
Well, then you start looking at cutting vets, trading vets, and then you start getting young linemen and rebuilding from there, especially if you get Williams.
Also a little curious how long they stick with the coach. I think they were disappointed.
Well, they fired Leftwich.
Yes, in what they did last year, and I think it's...
So we're going to get new play calling.
Yeah, I don't think that was their issue. I think this is easily the worst team, and it quickly might become one of the worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely.
I think this is just confusing because I don't totally know what this is. There are good parts, but they seem to lose a good defensive guy every year from a defense that they had built really, really strong, and it seems to...
They're getting old.
Yeah, sort of piece by piece starts to weaken. They kind of rebuilt the offense, but it's certainly not the offense under Sean Payton, and
Yeah.
I think their coaching leaves a lot to be desired. I know why they hired him, because he was cheap and there, but I don't know what to make of this team. They bring in at least a competent quarterback. I wouldn't call a great quarterback, but you can plug him and he plays NFL quarterback and isn't going to embarrass you.
Yeah.
Theoretically, Michael Thomas is going to play football again.
Yeah, how long does that last? That's one of my biggest notes.
I have not heard him out in the preseason yet, so that's a plus.
But his health has been an issue for 4 years now.
Mark that off as a no. Olive started to play, take over that number one role. You also have the factor of the Kamara suspension. So I really don't know where to slot this team because I don't think they're awful on defense, but I don't think they're great. I don't think they're awful on offense, but I don't think they're good.
I'm interested to see how their stars on defense hold up. They're getting old. Matthew's getting old. Jordan's getting old. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to play.
Lattimore was a drop last year, too.
Yeah, so. I don't know if they're going to be able to play at the caliber they have in years past, and I think we're going to see it just all around on defensive, a little bit of a drop-off from what they had last year, and I don't know if that offense is going to come up any better. Kamara serving the 3-game suspension to start the year is not going to help them get any momentum. And some of their swing games are early in their schedule. I don't know. I'm not big on them. They have the highest win total. I look at it. Yeah, they're favored in, I think, 10 games right now.
I think that's just all home field.
But I think value-wise, I think if you're going to pick a winner, you got to go with Atlanta or Carolina.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think you see a little bit more regression with this defense. I don't know really what this offense is. It was a mixed bag last year. I think there'll be improvement at the quarterback position, but I don't know if there'll be so much improvement that it really factors into wins and losses. So I don't know if this defense can stay stable and still one of the I want to say top 8 defenses in the league. They probably will be in and around Carolina, Atlanta, just because none of them I think can pull away. Yeah. But if that defense falls 12, 15, middle of the pack, I think they probably don't drop as low as Tampa, but I think they become real contenders in this division, and we have a sort of 2-division contender, Atlanta and Carolina. But overall, just a really, really bad division. Probably entertaining because most of these games are entertaining when they play division games. Yeah. Not very good. So who do you think wins this division?
I like Atlanta.
Yep, and I'm going Carolina. So that's probably a little bit of a futures preview on our NFL Futures Show, which will be coming in 2 weeks. So that wraps up today's show. Be sure to catch Winning Daily. Dynamite David will be back on Thursday to have his picks. I'll have my picks out Friday. You can catch all our shows on GLN TV on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. We'll have a big time week next week. We're going to have our college football futures show, a separate show from Wager Zone. We'll be back with Wager Zone. We'll finish out our college football preview. We'll start getting a little bit more into the NFL to wrap that up. And the week after that, we'll have our NFL futures. And then we'll be off to go. All sports seasons will be good to go. And then we'll probably have a month before we get into a little bit of an NBA preview. Wait till we start talking James Harden. That'll be fun. Anyway, lot of stuff coming to you. You'll be sure to want to grab that. Be sure to like and subscribe. That's our show, and we're out.
This is Stapleton Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.